I'm going to be showing you how I made this stacking box. So first, tools that I used. So I have a drill, I have screws, I have drill bits for pre-drilling holes, I have Velcro strips for attaching the movable foot bar. I have a saw and a little, I don't know what it's called, but it's to help you get the right angles, which you only need a 60 or a 90-degree angle, like straight across anyways, so you don't really need something that fancy. I have paint and a paintbrush, a measuring tape, and a sanding block or sanding sandpaper, whatever like that. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to be using a baseboard because it's going to be a lot faster for me to saw through. You can also, however, get the home hardware store you buy your wood from to cut your wood as well. It just usually costs about $1 a cut after the first or second piece. See helpful tips in the description if I've thought of anything that I didn't get on video, and let's get started. Okay, so let's pretend I'm making a stacking box for this fellow. He's not a show dog, but nobody needs to know that. So to make sure that you're making it the right size, you want to start with stacking your dog next to your board. And you're going to have your pen ready and available to mark. I'm not going to stack them right to the end because I'd rather give myself a little bit more space than a little bit less space. But you want to make sure that, now again, he's not a show dog. You want to make sure that they're stacked as you'd rather slightly overstacked and rather slightly understacked when deciding how long to make your piece, because you don't want to end up with it too short because it's going to be very difficult to make it too long. So we're not quite to the end here. I'm going to add a little bit on the end here, and I'm going to make a mark. If you can see that, I made just a little bit of a mark. And then what we can do, sorry, my dogs, what we can do is we also want to get their front distance. So we want to make sure, and you might want to do this, usually you stack a little bit wider in the rear than you do in the front, but you want to just make sure that you've got enough width across for your dog to comfortably stand both their front and rear feet. And then you're going to, again, give yourself a little bit of extra space, and you're going to mark it up. So I've got his front and his rear marked. I probably would have cut that piece first and then measured for the front, just because I'm going to find like a, if this ends up being 17.5 inches or something like that, I'll probably just round it up to 18 just to make life easier. But then if I round this up to 18, then I have to remember to push that back. So I probably would have cut this piece first, but again, just describing how I'm going to do this. So again, like I said, I'm going to measure up into that mark. Again, it's like 15 3/4, so I'm going to end up cutting at 16 inches. So I'm going to mark that. I like to mark it twice on my board, once at one end and once at the other end, just to make sure that I know that I'm straight. And then I'm going to cut that piece out, and then I'm going to measure from that first mark that I made to the other front mark, and that's about 8 3/4 inches. So again, I'm going to make his length, or his short piece, at about 9 inches. So I'm going to cut out 2 of the long measurements, because those will be your sides, and then I'm going to cut 4 of the short measurements, because short measurements are going to be the front and the back piece that holds the 2 long sides, and then they're also going to be where the dog actually puts his front feet on, front and back. So you're going to need 4 of the short pieces, and you're going to need 2 of the long pieces. Okay, so I have this in my little box. As you can see, I'm just cutting a straight line, so I've got it lined up with just my straight line piece where my marks are for the length. This is the first length that I measured, and then I said that I'd make it a more kind of normal length, so this is where I'm going to cut my piece. So I have that all like rigged up in there, and then I'm going to just take my saw, stick it in the middle, there we go. And I'm going to take my piece out, and this is my piece nicely cut to size. And what I'm going to do with each piece that I cut is I'm going to take my sanding paper or sanding block, and I'm going to round off any sharp edges on both sides so that feels really nice to the touch. And again, both sides. This one isn't too bad because this is the end. And so now we've got a nice piece, so I'm going to go ahead and cut my other long piece and my 4 short pieces, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I have all my pieces cut out. I have my 2 long sides, and I have my 4 short sides, and they've all been sanded a bit, and should be good to go. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to start attaching them. So what you need for that is you need your drill, obviously. You need a drill bit that fits your screws. You want wood screws for this because it's wood. Wood screws I find usually have a square tip, so you just want to make sure you have ones that fit. And you want to make sure that your screws are going to go all the way through. It's going to be hard to show you this. Well, you want to make sure your screws are going to go all the way through your first piece and nicely into your second piece. So if you look here, I've got lots of grip going into the second piece. As you can see, there's quite a bit sticking out there. With my 2x4s, I used 2.5 inch length of screws. 2x4s are generally not actually 2 inches by 4 inches. That's the length or the size they are when they're cut, but by the time they get through all the process and get to the store, they're usually a bit smaller than that. But the 2.5 inch gave me a nice amount of grip into my wood. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to attach them. Now don't attach a long piece to short piece. So we're going to make a box, and one of the important things, because we cut our short pieces all the same size, if we put this piece, the short piece, on the inside of our long piece, that's going to make the width wider, which means that our foot piece isn't going to be long enough to sit on this piece. So you don't want that. What you want to do is you want it in front of your short piece. That way your box stays the size that you want it to be. You can use some wood glue here. I didn't remember for my box, and my box is pretty sturdy. However, if you wanted to use wood glue, you can absolutely do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to, I assume that people that have drills kind of know how to do this, but just in case you don't, if you're borrowing a drill from somebody or whatever, what you're going to do is you're going to press your reverse button, so the button that points back away from the end. You're going to hold onto your piece here, and you're going to gently hold your trigger button, and that is going to loosen it so you can remove your drill bit, because what we're going to do is we're going to pre-drill holes. Pre-drilling holes helps prevent the wood from splitting, so in general it's a good idea. So you want to match on your box of screws. It'll tell you, if that'll focus, it'll tell you what size of drill bit. So you can't see it there, but this is a size 10 screw, and that is the size that I used for that as well. And it says I need a 9/64. Though it says on softwood you could use a 3 and 3, or a 3 and, I don't know how you say it, 3/32 or whatever. Baseboard might be considered softwood. I'm not entirely sure. I'm really not an expert on woods, but I'm just going to use this size because I don't need this piece to hold up. But you might want to ask if you're going to buy, when you're going to buy your screws, ask them with what wood you're using, which size that you need. So we're going to switch it to the drilling in side, so the forward facing one. I'm going to hold this and make it just a little bit smaller because this piece is very fine at the end, and then I'm going to slide it in, and I'm going to hold this piece again and gently drill forward until you've got your piece nicely secured. So you got that secured, and you can mark if you want to. I didn't on my 2x4 because I needed this whole kind of length, but you can mark the distance that you actually need to drill in with putting a piece of tape around here. I'm gonna just guesstimate because again, I don't need this to last. It doesn't really need to be pretty. It's just for demonstration. So again, putting it to the outside of, this is our long side here, putting it to the short piece to the outside. And I'm going to try to show you how to drill in. You want to line it up so it's perfectly aligned on the sides. This is going to be a little bit more difficult just because it doesn't stand as nicely on its own like the other piece did, and it's a little bit on the thin side for I think the size of screws that I have, but again, demonstration purposes. So I'm going to gently and slowly, especially since this again isn't a great size for this, I gently push it in. So now I've gone through both pieces of wood and I've created my pre-drill hole, so I'm going to press my backup button and we're going to slowly back out. There we go. I might have to put that in further again. I don't have it measured, so I'm not entirely sure. And then we're going to go down, make sure we're again drilling in the correct direction, so you want to be drilling in. I've made that mistake quite a few times. And I'm going to drill again. Another small hole. This one's a little bit of a more difficult hole to drill because you are right up against the floor, but just do your best. And then you're going to press the reverse button and you're going to reverse your tool out. So now I've created holes on both of them, drilling through to the exact directions that I want to go. And then I'm going to take my drill bit. I like to drill things in as I go just because I like to make sure that things are coming together properly because I am not super experienced with woodwork and stuff like that. But if you are experienced, A, you probably don't need this tutorial, and B, you probably go ahead and pre-drill all the holes and not have to worry about, you know, taking this out and putting it back in. So you're going to unscrew this in the same way, take your piece out, and you're going to slip in your correct piece, turn it to the actual drilling direction, hold it, and gently tighten it up so you got it nice and tight. Then we're going to take one of our screws, and again, if you're using 2x4s, these stayed lined up pretty good, but because I'm not using 2x4, I'm just going to gently screw in the first little bit just so that it holds my screw. So now I've got my screw inside of here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, but you can see I've got my screw in there, making sure our thing is on the drive button. And I'm going to line this up again, try and make it as straight a line, nice 90-degree angle as possible, and we're going to try to drill in our screw. So this did split the wood. Again, like I said, these screws are probably too big for this project because this is such a thin piece of wood. But again, I don't really care because it's not meant to last as long as it'll hold together well enough for our demonstration here. And again, I'm going to drill that in. All right, you could probably drill them in a little bit further if you were dealing with wood that is actually the correct size for your screws. But as you can see, we've got a nice solid connection there between these two pieces. So now it's up to you whether or not you do a short side or a long side. But I'm going to do those exact same steps for the entire rest of the piece here. So I'll try and maybe do one more. Hey. Try and maybe do one more for you, just so that if you couldn't see it very well, I did the long side. You can see it, but again, you want to put this piece on the outside of your short or your long piece so that you don't make your piece any wider. And we're going to drill 2 holes. Again, try to make sure that your piece is as straight as you can. You can even measure this back piece and make sure that it shows you that it is 9 inches. And you can adjust your piece, again, just so that you're trying to get it as accurate as possible. So now my back edge is 9 inches and my front edge is 9 inches. And I'm just going to drill carefully in. Again, try and make your drills as straight as possible, especially when you're dealing with wood that's a little bit on the thin side for your screws. And we're going to back it out, and then we're going to make it go forward again, and we're going to drill this bottom piece. And we're going to back it out. There we go, and again. And we're going to take our screws, and I'm going to just twirl this one in, just because again these don't stand super well. And I'm going to try and make this thing as straight as I can, and I'm going to drill this piece in. Again, splitting the wood because these screws are too big. Again, talk to your home hardware people about what screws would be best, and also what wood would be best for what you're using. But anyways, so now we've got most of our box made, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. As I'm going to place my piece, and I'm going to pre-drill and then screw in both of our pieces. But it's the exact same thing as I did on this side, so I'll just fast forward till that's done. Okay, so now we've got our nice sturdy little rectangle here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add our front bar. Now, the one thing to take into account, depending on how long your screws are, is you don't hopefully want to hit, when you're trying to drill this in, you don't really want to hit these. So my screws are probably on the long side for this piece of wood. So there's a possibility that I could get close to these. So you just want to be aware of that, and make sure that these screws are further down than your top screw is going to come in. But what you're going to do is just attach this top piece. I line it up directly with the front, and again on the 2 sides. And I'm going to just pre-drill the holes in the exact same way, and then I'm going to screw in my screws. I'm just going to be aware that I may hit those, but if your screws are kind of more the correct length, then you should be okay. Make sure you're drilling in. I may have missed, but anyways, and we'll drill in here. There we go. Alright, so we're just going to drill this straight in. That actually was just fine. And we're going to drill in the next one. So that's all screwed on that side, and we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. We're drilling in, making sure we're as lined up as we can be. wood cracking because it is really not designed for this. There we go. So now we've got our front foot that the dog stands on here. We've got the rest of the box. So the last thing you want to do is you want to secure this back piece. For that, I have a roll of Velcro. For 2x4s, I would buy a 1-inch wide piece of Velcro. This is 2-inch wide because I was thinking 2x4, 2 inches, but like I said, generally 2x4s are not actually 2 inches by 4 inches, and so this was too wide, so I just cut it kind of right up the middle so that it was about 1 inch wide, and that fit beautifully. I'm not going to do it for this piece because I don't want to waste the Velcro, but you would just choose whatever length or width of Velcro you needed. Again, you can cut them if need be, but you're just going to measure. If you want, you can do it completely from the very front to the back. If not, I only did mine kind of about halfway because my dogs I don't intend to get anything really, really small. So I only did it kind of from about halfway to the back. So you're gonna put, I put the soft side on the bottom. That way, if you have a haired breed, you know, that has a lot of hair on their feet, if you have the hook side here, then that could catch on their hair as they're trying to find this bar to stand on. So I like to put the soft side here, and then I put the hooky side on this piece. So you just want to make sure that you're putting the hook side where it's going to line up with the with this edge here. And before I put the Velcro on, that's when I painted, because otherwise you have to worry about painting around the Velcro, and that's a pain in the butt. So I just painted before I put the Velcro on, so I didn't have to worry about it. But that is pretty much our finished box. You can, you know, sand if you're using a wood that might be a little bit rough in places. You can sand as much as you want, and I did 2 coats of just regular wood house paint, and I just painted it on with a paintbrush because that's what I had handy. So this is eggshell, just regular old house paint, and just used a paintbrush to paint it on. I did 2 coats, and that also helps with anything that's kind of sticky, sticking out or a little bit rough or that kind of thing. So now if I can get my model, cute. All right, now, like I said, not a show dog. Does not know anything about doing show dog things. So I'm gonna put his front feet up. It's great if you can train them to put their feet up themselves. That's what my other dog does. But he is, again, not a show dog. Put your foot up. So I use. But there we go. As you can see, he is on his little block, and he is fitting nicely onto there. Again, it's up to you. You can say, oh, it's a little bit long, but it's a nice size. I don't have to worry about him being too small for it, and it's a pretty nice, sturdy box. It doesn't shuffle around, it doesn't wobble, because kind of do everything with it sitting flat on the floor, so then it should theoretically sit flat on the floor. So yeah, you just basic steps on how to build a very basic stacking box. I hope that was helpful, and we will see you again next time.